use food as vitality. It's the only thing that we put in our body for it to heal itself, and kind of goes all full circle to this idea of metabolism mindset, this idea that food is our life force. If we just feed it what we were given, these whole forms of food that are all over, the ones that don't have labels on them, right? That it is everything that we need. Our bodies are so amazing that they want to heal themselves. They intrinsically are trying to become stronger and better and healthier all the time. And unfortunately, we just fight them.
Welcome to the Fear No Food podcast, health and nutrition stuff for us normal people. I am thrilled to have Dr. Kari Anderson with us, a friend and a licensed professional counselor, coach, consultant, and speaker and author. And Dr. Kari is known for her compassionate and relatable approach to helping people heal their relationship with food and body image. And I know about this firsthand. She's coming. She's a friend of mine, but she's also you've done some work at we had like a little affinity group at our church for health and wellness that you came and shared and added a ton of value. You've written several books, including Food, Body, Love, but the greatest of these is Love, which we'll dive into, and its companion workbook. And Dr. Kari's work blends personal experience, science, faith, and making her really a true guide for those looking to live authentically and abundantly. So welcome to the show, Doc.
Thank you so much for having me. I was really excited to hear that you guys were doing this podcast.
Yeah, well, I'm excited to have you on. We had a mutual friend on, Kristen Bunger, that you know, and that episode just was one of my favorites, because I think just the more, I'm 8 years into this work, and the more you can't ignore just like what's happening between the ears and the connection with food and your emotional life. And this is the work that you breathe. But you had emailed me just about some of your focus lately, and some things really caught my eye. So let's just dive right into it. So you had mentioned that some of your focus is on this metabolism mindset, having this intrinsic focus on cellular health and gut health. That was like right up my alley. Walk me through a little bit of what the metabolism mindset is.
Yeah. Well, it is, it's really resonating with people. I even have, we have a little mascot, mitochondria, little cartoon.
Okay, love it.
Little gut bugs and it's this idea of really, from an intrinsic perspective, is how am I being a carer for? How am I healing my cellular health, my gut health? Yes. And that if I can, my body is so amazing, our bodies are so amazing that they want to heal themselves. They intrinsically are trying to become stronger and better and healthier all the time. And unfortunately, we just fight them. We fight with them. Whether through, I don't like the way you look, or fight with them from a perspective of, I'm going to starve you, or I'm going to, take, these pills or shots or whatever in order to kind of override you. Instead of thinking about befriending and partnering and saying, how can I work with what you do best? What I believe God has already created for us to thrive. And so let me join you. Let me collaborate with you. And so this idea is helping to give what we know with the science today. How can I feed you the things that you need in order to create energy, right? Or create in the gut in terms of the neuropeptides or, the neurotransmitters or everything to do your job. Right. Yeah. And so if we could, so this idea of helping, and maybe some people have a hard time with the idea of being the good parent. That's something you shared with me a long time ago that I think we even talked about in our book. We quoted you on just, if you could go a little bit deeper on the good parent at some point, that'd be. Yeah. Well, this idea that we have a higher self, right? Maybe that is guided, that has wisdom, that knows that in our best self, our most authentic self, right, knows how to care for those other parts of ourselves that maybe are frightened or rebellious, which is part of fear, or whatnot. And so, but there is this higher self that could come over and be the good parent, right, that can drive the bus instead of letting the kids drive the bus wherever it wants to, right? But some people don't resonate with the good parent, so I talk about gardening. And to be a good gardener, if you, let's say that you were caring for this garden, would you pour acid? Like when I think about artificial sweeteners and I used to be totally hooked on, Coke Zero, right?
Yeah.
And
Yep.
it's like, oh my gosh. Yep. Until I started visualizing this idea of would I pour acid on these beautiful plants that I am trying to nurture and grow? And that's the same with, our gut flora. Yeah. It's like, because we know what it does now. I mean, please, if you haven't looked into this, it's like some of the stuff that we're putting in ourselves is really hurting our body from doing what it does best. Yeah. Right.
I love that. I just wrote an email to our list on just like about just these like liver detoxes that I've seen, the teas and things like that. It's like, guess what? Like your liver is beautifully designed to already detoxify. You have all the equipment. And it probably has less to do with like starving yourself for 4 days on lemon water or some of these things, and just like, how do you let your body do what it's designed to do best?
So it really is this idea with the metabolic mindset is like, let's get inside in depth to what what God created, I believe, our bodies to do, and what can we do to come alongside of it as a collaborator and help it, rather than this idea is that our bodies are unruly and we have to wage war with it. And it's out of control. And these are the messages that the world sends, right? You need to hire me or take this product or whatever in order to tame the unruly body, right? And yet, it's like really long-term, and we were talking about this earlier, this idea of long-term sustainable wellness, our health span. I mean, pharmacy can keep us alive for a really long time. Right? But will we have that quality of life? And it really comes down to, and I use these 3 terms, it's like, what can we do to bring ourselves the energy, the clarity, and the confidence to live our best lives? And if we're not working with our body, it's going to be working against us.
Yeah. So that's because I hear that a lot, where it's like, I just feel like my body's stuck, or it does feel like my body is in rebellion, right? I'm going through menopause. Well, I'm not, unless I choose to identify as a menopausal woman, I guess. But I'm not going through menopause. But somebody might say, hey, I'm going through menopause, or this trauma happened recently, or I went through this divorce and something fundamentally feels like it shifted. So it does feel like my body's rebelling. I guess, what is that balance of saying like, yes, I need to honor my body and listen to what it's trying to do, but at the same time shape it, giving it what it needs to get back to kind of factory resets? Or how do you think about that? Because it does get rebellious.
Factory reset, and that's going to bring us to the circadian.
Yeah, let's talk about the circadian.
Okay. Our body is really in tune with our universe. I might sound a little ooh-ah, but I know who created the universe. So, and the body gets sick when it gets out of its own attunement with the rising of the sun and the setting of the sun, and in terms of our sleep, it all boils down to sleep as really getting ourselves a reset.
Yeah.
And so when we sleep, when we move our bodies, when we eat, has everything to do with us working with that entrainment of what our body wants to do at what time of the day or night. It's got the master clock and that everything else sets its clock to. And if we're trying to do something at a time where the body is trying to do and scheduled to do something else, it causes fear and friction. Mm-hmm. And that's where, the title of my book came from in terms of food, body, and love. Love is a state of no fear, which is so cool because your book is called Fear No Food. Mm-hmm. And I think that if we can really tune into creating a rhythm so that our body is becoming entrained with what it really wants to do naturally, that things aren't as hard. It's not as resistant. For instance, about a year and a half ago, I got this Oura ring. Some people go, what is that? And so I've been really watching my biorhythms and understanding when my body is in a state of fear and when my body is in a state of love, which would be a state of non-fear. Okay. This idea of that all is well, things are cooking along, and we want you to connect as the best you can with other people, because that's what we're meant to do, is to be in relationship. Or when are we, we're in a state of connection, or we're in a state of protection, okay, and fearful protection. So what I found is that when I eat later at night, or I eat certain types of things that might mess up my blood sugar a little bit, my body goes into a state of stress because or if I don't get enough sleep, because in the morning I will get these printouts from Oura. My husband jokes with me. So how'd you sleep last night? Right. Yeah. Right. And he goes, you got to look at your app, right? Instead of how do I feel, right? Right. So he gives me a hard time, but it'll really say, something's super wrong. Like, what's up? Yeah. What did you do?
Based on what metrics? Like HRV?
Heart rate variance, resting heart rate. Okay. Mostly in terms of I have a baseline that's about 55. Okay. If my resting heart rate only comes down to 60, they'll say, hey, what's up? Temperature, I could be off by 0.5. In terms of increased temperature, oxygen levels. I mean, this ring can do.
Yeah, right. I had a Whoop, which is similar-ish, but it's like, it's got their algorithms being like, hey, something's up. Something's up.
What's going on? Right. Interestingly, and I've had a lot of clients that have sleep apnea, and based on what they eat, if they eat later at night versus they don't eat later at night, it actually will increase your sleep apnea and your oxygen processes. So it's not just a constant thing. Our bodies are kind of, because basically what it's saying is that I'm having to do these things that I'm not used to doing at this time. Yeah. I have a whole checklist of maintenance that I want to get done in terms of filing and inflammation reduction types of things or whatnot. And if I'm busy doing these other things and fighting something that I'm not supposed to have in my body at this time, then we're exhausted in the morning and we're behind the 8 ball. Yeah. And so what I think it's important for us to, not that I'm such a, I never eat at night or I don't eat sugar, right? Because I know my body reacts the older I get to things that it never reacted to before. I think this also, Dan, has to do with aging. I have so much more sensitivity in my 60s than I ever had in my 20s or 30s. I saw signs of it, right? But now I react, I don't have great knees anymore, right? And so my inflammation in my knees with the bone-on-bone and joints and whatnot, I have to be really careful because anything can cause a gut reaction of inflammation. So being kind of a joiner and a studier of my own rhythm and what can throw me off is that's what I think, that if we can kind of get back to basics of, our bodies love to wake up when the sunlight comes up and to get some sunlight into our face. The first thing when we wake up, to move our bodies around the block and to get our energy going, because we're meant to do a rev up in the morning, right? But then when the sun starts to go down, our bodies want to start to slow down. They want the lights to come down. Yeah. They want more of the stretching movements, not the rev up, right? Yeah. So that's the power down. And we work with that. And then in terms of our bodies want to eat at regular times. And if we don't eat at the same times every day, right, and we mess it up, or we eat so much here and not enough there, our body's going, hey, what's going on?
Yeah, I'm going to panic store this because you didn't feed me all day.
What the heck? Yeah. What's going on here? And so the more that we can be structured in those things, in terms of our sleep patterns, our movement patterns, and our feeding patterns, and our light patterns, right? If we can do that, the body starts to feel entrained and it starts to feel safe. And the whole goal is to feel safe, right? And so that's what a lot of the Food, Body, and Love book was about, is that I took this concept of safety not only in terms of our external world, relationships and people, and but also with our internal world, in terms of when our nervous system signals fear, instead of, oh no, I'm feeling fear, what's wrong? It's like, oh, thank you. What's up? Right? You're giving me some feedback here. What are you afraid of? What can we do? This is the good parent. What can I do to help you calm down a little bit? So being so attuned to our external world, our internal world, and try to create safety. When I started understanding the concept that inflammation was just cellular fear.
I never heard it put that way. I love that.
Thanks for listening. This podcast is brought to you by Revitalize Weight Loss and Wellness. It's unfortunate that we've been led to believe that significant weight loss results can't be sustainable, and to be sustainable, it has to take forever. At Revitalize, we've proven out through research and real-world experience that a combination of high-quality coaching, high-quality supplements, and a customized nutrition plan is really the key to seeing significant results in the short term and being able to sustain those results through metabolic empowerment over the long term. If you'd like to find out more about how we've helped over 11,000 people lose weight and keep it off, check us out at the link below or at revitalizeweightloss.com.
So this idea of cellular fear, or it has to do with inflammation, that there's been something that I have ingested or something that has happened that my body sees as a threat, right? And then it goes into a state of protection. Okay? And when it's in a state of protection, it is therefore not in a state of love or ease or connection. And so I start looking at things not only from a psychological perspective, I take it not only into a biological perspective of safety, but also even a neurological. And that's when we can get into the lizards.
Let's do it. Yeah.
But it just helped me more to conceptualize fear from a more global perspective.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, because you're right. The mind informs the body, and the body informs the mind, and the spirit, and all of that. So how if okay, I'm in tune, I'm coming home and just fought traffic, I had a hard day, was fighting fires. I starved myself because I didn't bring lunch, and my body's just in this state. I think we've all been there, right? Where you're like, oh, I'm intermittent fasting. It's like, no, dude, you're just ignoring your body's need for food because you forgot to bring something. And then you're going to go home and all the stuff's there. What's the process that somebody might be able to, what can I do, or what ought I do to start kind of bringing my nervous system back to kind of baseline before I just go raid the cupboards and then go into a shame cycle, or, we've all been there,
Absolutely. Well, I don't think people give enough appreciation to low blood sugar and anxiety. Okay. So when our blood sugar drops low, our body goes into a state of fight-flight because it thinks it's dying, right? Because it needs a certain amount of glucose to especially run this thing. It takes a huge amount of glucose to run our brains. And so we have to first stabilize our blood sugar, especially if we have been not eating or we've eaten a load of carbohydrates that we've had a insulin rush and a hypoglycemic drop, okay? And then we go into a state of fear. So low blood sugar, however we got there, whether it be from a lot of caffeine and sugar that dumps us, or we've been fasting and not eating for a long period of time, we have to first have our body feel safe. So I would give it something. We want to we want to do a overcorrection, right? Okay, so we want to okay, I got to just eat. I would say is that we can get some quick, energy, like a trail mix or something with some good protein, some quick carbohydrate, and some fat, some good.
So I remember you teaching me at one point, like rest and digest. Like actually, the process of eating can be a restful, like triggering the rest as well. It's like, hey, you are safe.
Right.
The food isn't scarce. It's here.
Yes, it's here. So, I think that even a little palmful of almonds, right, can kind of disengage, create safety in the body and disengage the fear. And it's like, okay, all is well. It also has to do with mindset is huge, but really it's like, I'm going to be okay. If we think that, we're out of control of food, then we're going to be out of control of food. We have to be really careful about, okay, I'm good now. I'm going to be and then getting yourself, I always say people should have a place in their home. Maybe it's in your car or in your garage before you go into the, depending on what you're going to be entering into, but a place of sanctuary.
What do you mean by that?
You go to a place that has that's sensorily calming. Like my back porch especially at this time of year, it's got jasmine blooming right over here. I've got this great chair that I look out at the hummingbird feeder. There's green. Nature in itself is a really calming thing for our nervous system. Or you go into that beautiful chair in that room, right? And I always say it needs to be a food-free zone, right? Because for those of us that think of food as safety, we need to create spaces of safety that we can take in some tea or a cold drink or something, but that we're trying to train our body that food isn't the only safety.
That's good.
So where we calm ourselves down, where we listen to some soothing music, we do some breath work, we're surrounded by some safe sensory types of objects, whether it be your dog that's right next to you that you can pet or something. And then once you get a hold of your right brain or your cognitive brain, not your fearful lizard brain or primitive brain, then we can make better decisions about what it is that we're going to eat today or tonight. Okay. Now, some people can't ever, because they've run out of juice, bandwidth. They've lost their ability to make good choices for the day.
Yeah.
Okay. And so some people aren't going to be able to capture that again. So they need to be in a safe place, and they also then need to have a plan that is so habitual that this isn't about choice anymore. We're not going to make good choices. What was prepared, what is there, but it does calm yourself down with that before I can go through the plan, right?
Yeah, I like that you had mentioned that. You're just like, your theory is once people lose their mind clarity and energy, it's really hard to hold to that value-driven identity of like, I am this. Which is interesting, and this isn't like me just shilling our program, but I think critics could easily criticize the first part of our program because it's structured. And I think for certain people, particularly people that you work with, it's like, that's probably a no-no. But we find that a lot of folks really love the structure. They really, I think having a structure and is like, what is my plan?
Yeah.
Can we remove all the thinking out of it of what I'm going to eat, where I'm going to eat it? And I know that's true for me just in my regular life. Like if I don't bring lunch, I'm either not eating lunch or I'm not eating till 3 or 4 o'clock. And then my circadian rhythms are completely whacked because then I'm not hungry for dinner at 6, or I'm eating just crazy stuff that like I know is not optimal for me. Or I'm, we have snack.
There's some great studies on this.
Yeah.
People that order their lunch in the morning, they place their order for lunch the first thing in the morning instead of waiting till noon to place their order.
Healthier options, probably.
Completely.
Yeah.
Almost 30 to 50% more calories are ordered. If they do it at the time that they're hungry and they're stressed.
Yeah, it's like don't go shopping when you're hungry type
absolutely.
thing. Yeah.
So I do like the structure. I think that what I call it, and I'm not going to use the version with the swear words, but it's like I don't care.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Okay. There was this one guy that came to me, Doc, I don't know what's wrong with me. He goes, he goes, I can't do this. And I go, well, what do you mean? And he goes, well, he goes, I just get to a certain point in the day where I just start going through the drive-thrus and I don't care anymore.
Because you're so fatigued from all the stuff of life.
I can't think. I can't make good decisions. I'm just like in a fight, flight, kind of a fear kind of thing. And I said, I understand that, but when's the last time you got a really good night's sleep? Well, actually, I slept really good night before last. Tell me what your value system was and what your thinking was when you woke up. He says, I had great plans. Everything's going to go well. I go, that's your true self. That's your authentic self, because you're in a state of love. You're in a state of you're not in a fear state. You're rested. Your body feels like, okay, I can do anything. And you're more attached to your value system at that time. What happened by 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Did you lose your value system? Are you not the same person? I am. But the lizard's taken over. Okay?
What do you mean by that?
The fear, love, primitive self, right? The one that just seeks pleasure, the one that just seeks safety, like in any manner possible. Yeah. Right? It's the reptile in us, and I call it the little lizard. And it doesn't have anything to do with our true self, our cognitive self, the one, the value-driven self. It just is kind of like, it's either got on the habit treadmill, I'm going to do what I always do, right? Or it's in this state of pleasure seeking at all cost, right? And so that part of you has been taken over. And instead of fearing that part, I think it's called the, taming your own dopamine. It's like we can learn to put a leash on it. Okay. And we know that we have that part of ourselves, and we can befriend it. We can say, okay, this is what I know about myself. And this takes some mindfulness. So this is almost like a 201 from a 101 of mindfulness. Okay. What are those things that lead me to less clarity and suck my energy? So you know that. And for me, I know that if I have 1 cup of coffee in the morning, now these are dopamine types of things in our lives. My body has a very low threshold for these types of things. Okay.
Always has, or you feel like that's
I feel
increased?
Like it always has. Okay. Maybe I've noticed it more because I'm more mindful.
Sure.
But I was one of those, and it talks about in my book, I was a kid that created a neural pathway of sugar as a way to calm my fears early, 8 years old. Pure sugar, right? I would just eat sugar packets, okay? So my body has a great sensitivity to the amount of sugar that I give it, and it has this real sensitivity to caffeine. I also learned this because I did some genetic testing and learned that it takes my body like 24 and sometimes 48 hours to clear out caffeine from my body. I'm no
So
slow
metabolizer.
metabolizer.
Yeah.
Okay. So I know that I could be okay if I have like 1 cup of coffee or 2 cups of decaf. But if I take my third, I start to lose touch with my ability to think clearly. Okay. Then it starts to hook. And then what that would lead me to would be more of a drive for looking for sugar or looking for what I call shiny objects. It keeps me on this trail of seeking where, since I know that about myself, I have to be very careful about those types of dopamine hits that are external, and also then helping those things that are dopamine hits for myself that are more natural, like sunlight, movement, nature, prayer, meditation.
Do we get so desensitized because we abuse caffeine, or because the first thing we do is scrolling on our phone? We get these like dopamine. Is there a way to reset that, or like?
Yeah, it's interesting. I just got interviewed for an article on what's better, a dopamine detox or a slow, kind of slowly back off from it. And it really depends on the person. One of the best times, of course, to do a dopamine reset is on a vacation. So don't take your phones, don't, or scroll and just really, ease into that. But that's the best time to do it. But I find myself sometimes just and it's painful, but just say, okay, no more.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep. I'm done with this.
I'm done with this.
Yep.
And at those times I have to just be honest with myself about what this is doing, because I really pay attention to when I lose my ability, especially in the work that we do, Dan. I have to be present for my folks. If I'm not present and I get robotic or whatever, I lose my edge, my authenticity, and people know that I'm not all there for them. And so it's really important for me and the work that I've chosen, or God's chosen for me to be grounded, and not to get caught in these webs.
I think that's true for anybody who feels like their work's meaningful, right? To show up for your employees, to show up for your spouse, to show up for your kids. Like, I've gotten sucked down the very bro side of the internet when it comes to the bro science of like using nicotine as a cognitive enhancer, not tobacco, but nicotine, and experimented with that a little bit. And it's like, I could be super focused, but guess what? I'm training my body to want more dopamine hits.
Right.
And then I'm super irritable if I'm not getting that. And I'm like, this is just not good. Like, and it's like, I've tried to logic my way out of it, being like, let me see what the research says. All I can find is like good stuff about this nicotine stuff. But then like, I know intuitively, like I am training my body to want more and more of these dopamine hits. So then I want to I suppress then my hunger cues, so then I want to binge later on chocolate or whatever the thing is. And I'm just irritable when I don't have it, when I am at home and I'm not showing up in other parts of my life.
That's your mindful feedback, is when you don't get it, you're irritable.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? Or when you're so looking forward to like getting that Starbucks, going through that drive-through and get it. I mean, that you get literally, I'm excited because that's the habit pleasure pull.
Yep.
A lot of people, they don't understand that it's actually not getting the reward after a while in terms of the habit loop, that it's the seeking that gives us the excitement. It's the dopamine hit is the idea. Once you've made that decision to go for the pleasure, then it's like rewarding you like crazy. Like dopamine, yes, go get it. That's why it's like trying to get your fix is even more rewarding than actually consuming it.
Actually, when you get it, like it never delivers.
It doesn't.
Like can't wait to get Andy's ice cream, and then
never
it's never enough.
It's never enough, and that's what they say about with binge eating disorder, which is which would be binging on anything, but this idea that it's in the seeking. It's in the hunt of getting it. It's not in it's like wanting is the goal, not the liking.
Interesting.
So when you feel that, that's where you start getting real and honest with yourself.
Sure. It's like, I think, I think a poignant question that I learned through doing my own work is just like, whether it's like, what part of me am I trying to nourish? And like, how can I, like, to the parent thing, right? It's like how, or like with alcohol, like 2 years without having any alcohol, and then found myself, I had back injury recently, and just having to sit on the couch, my routine started, I'm like finding myself wanting to have a drink or two, not going and abusing alcohol, but it's just like, that's why am I stepping out of what was like kind of my value set, or being tempted to do that. And it's like, well, what part of me am I trying to nourish? And I don't know if I always have an answer, but I think that's like a helpful clarifying question, at least for me, of just like,
sometimes it's just the pull. I don't know if you all know, I mean, you probably have experienced this. When you're so tired and you know that you need to go to bed, okay? But you decide that you might watch something on Netflix, whatever. Do you ever spend an hour trying to figure out watching trailers?
Yes.
You watch one trailer and you cannot decide. It's because you have reached that point of decision fatigue, and you get a hit every time you look at a new trailer. Or, I don't know why, on my Facebook reel, if I start to scroll these reels, it's these Frenchies. I don't even have a Frenchie. These are these dogs, right? Okay. But it's like the same kind of reel after another. Do you ever get where it's like you're scrolling, and maybe I've just got it really bad and other people don't, but I'm scrolling these stupid things. It might be pickleball, whatever it is that they're reeling. And I'm doing, and it's like you want to put it down. Yeah. And you feel this
like pull to like
it does, pick it up. To pick it up for one more.
Yeah.
Or you're watching. This weekend I did this to myself. I was watching this mini series, right, on Netflix. And you know how that scrolls, it says one more episode or next episode, and you watch it and you're saying, okay, stop. I'm going to stop.
Yeah.
And oh no, I'm going to, that is your clue that you've been hooked.
Yeah.
Right. And it'll take you away from what's important to you and your value system, but to just wake up and pay attention to that dopamine pull and know that it's there for a reason. It's to keep you alive. It's there to get us up in the morning. That's why we have cortisol surges in the morning, right? And blood sugar surges. I work with a lot of people that are diabetic, and they go, why is my blood sugar so dang high in the morning when I haven't even eaten anything all night? And I says, because they want you to go out and hunt and get something to eat so you don't die. Yeah. Right? It's like, wake up, get out there, find something, hunt and gather.
Yeah.
Right?
So talk to me about intermittent fasting a little bit. So if like our body's saying, hey, eat, what's your take on intermittent fasting?
Yeah.
Unfiltered.
Unfiltered. Okay. Well, I think that it has to do with the person and their own blood sugar management. Okay. And it also has to do with their level of what we call food insecurity. Okay. Food insecurity is this underlying, whether it be real or unreal, idea that I'm not going to get enough food. Okay. And so people that have had either some real food insecurity in their life, meaning that they didn't have access to food, people locked up food. See, I deal with a lot of people with eating disorders, and so their food insecurity all comes from a lot of different places. Mostly it could be that, like people that they've done studies that people that frequent food pantries, food banks, things like that. They did studies on them, and they have the highest level of eating disorders of any population. Okay, because of their food insecurity.
I don't know where my next meal is going to come from.
I don't know. So when I do get it, It's high levels of bulimia, binge eating disorder. Okay. Well, our ancestors used to do that too. They get a kill, they get a find, they found a beehive. The whole tribe is going to eat all that honey right now. Okay. Because they don't know if they're going to get it again. So there is a drive in us of the fear of not getting enough food is to keep the species going. At the same time, there's some people that it's induced because people have controlled their food. Okay. So meaning I have a lot of people that had an affinity for the junk foods and didn't have they had the impulsivity around it. So families locked up food. Okay. And so some people got it and some people didn't. Right. Or we had people that were put on diets at a young age. Right. And this is all you get. Only this much. People that did diets on their own. This is all you get. This is, it's like I remember I did Nutrisystem at a time where, now they have fresh, but we had these foil wrapped back in the 80s, right? Where it was like you warmed it up some way and I would just press to get every little morsel of that beef stew out of this, this fake food thing. And because ration. That's my ration. Yeah. It's all I get. Yeah. So it instills this feeling in you that it's never enough and whatnot. And so some people have that really a very real rebound to that. And anytime this idea of you can't eat until 11, right? Or you can't eat after this time or whatnot, that provokes this fear response in them. And remember, when your body goes into a state of fear and fight flight, we lose our ability to think and our rational decision making. And so I don't care. Right? I don't care. I'll do that. So I would just say that you have to measure the history of the food insecurity and how provocative that is going to be and whether they'll be able to talk it down off the ledge or not. Now, that's one reason I think that some people shouldn't do it. The other thing is that the very way that people do most of their intermittent fasting is I'm going to wait as long as I can until I eat. Okay. Well, it actually is reinforcing that restrict binge cycle. Okay. So what happens is I'm not hungry until I eat, right? Because our body will kind of shut down and won't let you, especially if you feed it some, caffeine or some other dopamine types of things to get through. But then once they start eating, that's all they can think about. Because of that overcompensation. So they start thinking, and then they eat all the way into the night again. And tomorrow I'm going to start over and I'm not going to eat. Okay. And so they get into this starve binge. And so people that have that history of starve binge, I would say that that's not a good thing either, unless they can change the intermittent fasting to a more circadian level. Our bodies really don't want to eat much after sun has gone down. Our body wants to eat as soon as the sun comes up. So if people can do it, which some people go, oh, you've got to be kidding, because that's when I eat most of my food is after dinner, right? Or
after
goes down. But if you could actually train your body to eat breakfast early, maybe even I don't like to eat until about an hour after I wake up. And then to have, your structured eating and then to stop. Right. And not eat after the sun has gone down. Yeah. Right. That actually, it does, you can have the same window. Right. But but what it does is it works more in entrainment with what your body is wanting.
I like that. Yeah. That's one of the things that we've recently changed in the last 6 or 7 months about our program is it's a tool. We can change it. We can adjust it. Like, what's going to work best for you? Because I do think there's some people who are just natural intermittent fasters. But this is really interesting because I feel like this has been, you look on the internet and it seems like intermittent fasting is just like everybody thinks you should do it. And there I came across the woman, Mindy Pelz, I think, Dr. Pelz. And she's very pro this. But then, like, in my own research, I was putting together an article that we have. I'm like, intermittent fasting, especially aggressive fasts, probably isn't the best for certain hypothyroidism, women in menopause. Like there's some, but this doctor is telling you that like 3-day fasts should be, that increases stem cells. So recovery from this and that. And I'm like, it's like everything now. It's like things get so dogmatic, or you get just like, well, what weighs up? And, any thoughts there? I mean, let's assume there isn't a history of binging or disordered eating. Is it just a matter of personal preference? Like,
if you're enjoying this podcast and would like to learn more about what you can do at home to take control of your health, check out our book. It's an Amazon bestseller. It's called Fear No Food. It's written by myself and Dr. Abood. You can get it at fearnofoodbook.com, or you can find it on Amazon by just typing in Fear No Food, Dan Lemoyne.
There is something to give our mitochondria a rest. There is something to that. It starts to clean up, right? And
autophagy.
Yeah, right. And so at the same time, we also know I think that our eating window shouldn't be more than 12. I think because of the circadian. I think our body wants to do things at certain times that it doesn't need to be, so a 9 to 9 at the most, where some people eat all the way to 11 and eat early, they're eating all the time. And then their body doesn't have a chance to do what it needs to do when doesn't want to be digesting. So I think there is some good science to it, but for the most part, unless somebody's really sick, there's also a great deal of research on keto.
Oh yeah. Especially for like cancer patients and before chemotherapy and things like that.
And seriously mentally ill now. Keto is helping the schizophrenic. It's helping the bipolar. It's helping people that have never been helped. Some people, anorexia, believe it or not, that they are treating with putting them on ketogenic diets. But can the mainstream, can they thrive in a sustainable wellness in terms of a rhythm for the rest of their life and being in tune with your body when you're in keto? Absolutely, you can't.
Sure.
So there are places for some of these outline types of therapies, like the 3-day fast or that for certain purposes. But I think everybody needs to think, could I do this, or can I continue to do this as a lifestyle for my whole health span? So, because the whole goal is that we don't have to have these. When HCG was a big thing, I used to have a client that would come in and she would say, well, I do HCG every May. Really? Why do you keep doing it every May? Right? Well, so that I could get into, swimsuit. In my swimsuit and everything. And I go, well, then what happens? Well, then I just go back to what I do all the time. And then and I go, gosh, doesn't that feel exhausting? What do you think? What do you think your body feels like? What would it tell you about HCG? Because HCG, I don't know, maybe the hormones really worked, but I think that 500 calorie diet had something to do with it.
The FTC and the FDA would think otherwise when they're just recently were like, actually, it's not the HCG at all. It's just the 500 calories.
It's the 500 calorie diet.
Stop selling it as part of weight loss programs.
Right.
I don't know if they're enforcing it, but
yeah. But anyway, I just said, wouldn't it? You think about what your body goes through every year with that, or on this and off that. What if you found a sweet spot, right? Where that you didn't always have to think about food all the time, that you just naturally, you fed your body in a rhythm that it loved to do, and you were thinking about energy. One of my mottos lately that I've had is it all comes down to energy. It just all comes down, whether it be from mitochondrial energy or whether it become with our ability to think and engage and connect. And when we lose our energy, we lose everything, right? We just can't. And so what could we do? Build a lifestyle around maintaining as much energy and thought power and to live our lives every day. And then when that day's over, we surrender it. The day is gone, and we get a new gift of a new day in the next. And that we work on those 20 or 24-hour rhythms. And I always think it from a spiritual perspective too. It's like no matter what I did in that day with my food or my movement or whatever, whether I met my expectations or I didn't, I surrender that day. And I just say, I'm giving this, putting it to rest. It is finished.
Yeah.
And then in the next day, I get up and I'm gifted another day, and I try to do with it what I can. There's so many people that are working in the arrears all the time.
Yeah.
I'm making up for what I did yesterday. I can't eat today because I ate too much yesterday, or I got to. We only have enough for each day.
Yeah.
But see, that's calm and that's peace to me.
Yeah, there should be some freedom in that surrender of just like, hey, my life's a mist, and all I have really is just today.
I know.
Let's talk about these GLP-1 medications real quick, because I think it's something you said sparked my mind going there, because I'd heard this, we'll call him an expert, talking about how he feels like these medications are really just helping us level up our biology that hasn't caught up to the fact that we don't need to like panic starve things, that like we have this ancestral brain that is just looking for, hey, our tribe just found all of this honey, we need to just eat it all now. We're looking for salt, fat, sweet all the time, and our brains are just wired for that still, even though there's a plethora of calories on every corner. And his thoughts were, hey, this is like us helping us level up our biology. What are your thoughts there? What's your take? What's your hot take on that?
I'd say, wouldn't that be great if that's what that did? If that's all that did.
Yeah.
If that GLP was just to help us to calm our cravings, our food noise, our dopamine pull, right? Then it would be the greatest thing. It would be the magic pill. Okay? Then we could just all rest.
Yeah.
And it would be great. And yet I think that maybe is what they're selling. But it isn't all that, right? Especially for some people. And when it first came out, I read everything that a GLP could do. And I thought, this is the most novel drug that is ever this is the greatest. Heart disease, brain, because it helps with the inflammation. There were so many systemic things that this did. I thought this was the greatest. And then I get a little cynical here, but then Big Pharma got a hold of it, especially when the side effect was weight loss.
Oh, sure.
Okay. The GLPs have been around for a while. It's peptide, right?
Like a decade or more.
Yeah. And they've been helping people with diabetes and at low doses. Okay. And that's novel in the sense of what it was meant to do. But what happens is then it gets put on a market for the side effect, okay? Not for what its main purpose was. And they then market it for 2, 3, 4, 5 times the dosage. And guess what? People lose weight. Why do they lose weight? Because they're sick. Because I don't feel good, right? And I'm not hungry. And if our bodies are meant to use food as vitality, and it's the only thing that we put in our body for it to heal itself, and it kind of goes all full circle to this idea of the metabolism mindset, metabolic mindset, this idea that food is our life force. Okay. And if we just feed it what we were given, these whole forms of food that are all over, the ones that don't have labels on them, right? That it is everything that we need. But now there's a drug that says, I don't even want to eat, which is our life force. Don't you think something's going to go wrong? You know, people are dropping weight, but it's kind of like, well, it doesn't matter what kind of weight when half of it is their muscle mass. Then when they either can't keep affording the drug or they're tired of feeling sick, they stop taking the drug. And then now their metabolism, it's like the studies on The Biggest Loser, right? Yeah. Right? That their metabolic rates were like 700 to 1,000 less at the end of the cycle, right? So they've lost muscle mass, which is going to put them at risk for all kinds of things in terms of osteoporosis and falls and everything else. And so they're in a worse shape than when they started. But I'm thin.
What is that doing? And I don't, maybe you've worked with folks who are on these medications or not, but like just this idea of like my relationship with my body when I'm taking these medications that are causing me to not, basically to suppress this hunger cue, but then also like the terrible side effects of like mostly the gut side effects. Or just like, does that just exacerbate like this feeling of I'm at war with my body and my body is against me?
Yeah.
Even though, I'm losing weight and I'm feeling good about these pounds, like what are we running the risk from like a psychological standpoint with these medications?
Well, it continues to reinforce, one, that we can't trust our bodies. We have to use a synthetic drug in order to trust ourselves. Okay. Another message would be is that that hunger is a bad thing and it should be feared. Right. Well,
or like you were just saying, calories, right? Like calories equal fat. It's like, no, that's your energy for life.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. So all these messages about food in our body that they can't be trusted. We can't be trusted, right? And we need, and yet it just takes longer, but to become mindful about, I know when I'm starting to get that hook, or I know that that for me, I can't eat these types of things or drink this much caffeine or do this because I lose myself. Or it takes a lot longer to become an owner, to be your own have your own owner's manual for your body, right? There's nuances of experimentation, curiosity, course correction, course correction, until you get to the point where you go, this works for me. Yeah. Because I'm telling you, not everybody is the same. And they're not all the same with the GLPs. There are some people that I have a few clients. I encourage them to stay on lower doses, but they're doing really well. They're doing this work alongside me.
Yeah, right.
And they're eating 3 meals a day, solution. Right? Yeah. And their goal is that I just needed a little support, right? I needed a little bit of a crutch or a walking stick with this journey, but my goal is to create my owner's manual to how to feed and fuel and work with this body, so that I can think my best and feel my best, and then I will move away from it and course correct. And figure this all out.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, that's something we encourage our members is like, just be a student of your body, be a student of food. Like I was chatting with a woman, she ultimately wasn't a good fit for our program, but I'm just like, please just don't give up. She was just like, I'm so ready to give up. And I'm like, if there's any encouragement, like the research is pretty clear, like keep trying stuff until you find what works for you, because you eventually will. Like just stay in the game.
Yeah. Well, it's really interesting that you say that. I mean, I'm sitting here thinking about, we've got enough material to talk forever and ever, but my book was about my recovery.
Yeah, let's talk about the book.
And the reason I wrote it is because it was after 30 years in the industry of eating disorder treatment, and I was finding this, there was so much from an internal perspective in terms of gut health, brain health, reward expectancy with the dopamine. There was so much more than this is not just a psychological issue. And so I essentially myself actually had what I call 2 different recoveries. I had my recovery from a eating disorder, and maybe I haven't been clear about that, but I got into this field and the passion about this field because I had what I consider now a sugar addiction as a kid that turned into full-blown binge eating disorder. Okay, and had recovery from that in my late 20s, early 30s, and then got into the field. Okay, but then I was really got caught in what I call anorexic-centric thinking, in that this message, and you and Kristen talked about this a little bit, about all foods fit, right? And accept your body, at any size, and the real body positive, which is really wonderful. It's helped. This body positive movement that we've had, and health at every size, I think has helped heal a lot of prejudice and bias and terrible stuff. At the same time, I think that it has sent messages to people that that you can't lose weight and keep it off, okay? Because you're just fighting your body, that you just need to accept your weight and where your body's at, okay? And I think acceptance is important, and we need to accept ourselves along the journey, right? And work with our body.
Which is I think a hard part about counseling in general, at least me in my work with my counselor. It's first thing I said to her was I want to be more content, but I don't want to be complacent. And that's a challenge, right? Because how can you be I am fully content and I feel safe, right, and I'm good, in the concept of body image stuff. But at the same time, I want to make positive movements towards a healthier self, whether that's emotionally, mentally, physically.
Yeah. And then coming from a food perspective, it's it comes from a place of people that fear food. If someone has anorexia, they really fear food. And I'm going to control myself around this food. And then there's those that just have impulsivity around food, that feel like they can't. It's the opposite, right? And this idea that if we expose ourselves and eat all the food, in fact, there was a book that was called Overcoming Overeating once, and they said, go get a grocery cart and go through the grocery store, and every food that you crave, I want you to get all of it and just eat it and eat it, eat it. And you get to the point where you're just sick of it and you don't want to eat it anymore. They never had the reward expectancy, because as soon as you're not feeling sick anymore, you crave it again.
Yeah, sure.
How many people have eaten all these cookies, right? And I'm so sick, I could never eat these cookies again. They throw them away. And in the morning, when they don't feel so sick, where do they go? They dumpster dive and get the cookies again. So this idea that if you just expose yourself to all the food all the time, that you're going to not want it is not true for everybody, okay? And the other thing is that it doesn't mean that you're recovered because you eat the dessert. Right? See, this is from an eating disorder kind of treatment perspective, is that they do challenges in all the treatment centers for brownies and ice cream and stuff, and because they ate it, then they're good. But that's coming from a place of somebody that restriction is what makes them feel good, not the binging. Some people's nervous systems, when they binge, they feel calm and they feel better. Other people restrict and they feel calm and they feel better. So this restrictive focus of treatment actually led me to another health crisis.
While you were working
While I was
field.
working in this field.
Wow.
Okay? Because it's like I was in this environment that, first of all, was saying, when you're heavier and when you're bigger, that's just who you are, and accept that, and that's great. You make people feel comfortable that you're working with because you're their size, okay? Mm-hmm. And that, eating, this idea of, intuitive eating, right? This idea is that, okay, what do I feel like? What do I want? What textures? What, and then just eat enough and then stop. I don't have a brain that does that.
Thank you. I feel like I've talked to a lot of folks in your field that I'm like, I get that. And even like I think about parenting my kids, I'm like, their little intuitive brain would just be eating chocolate chips all the time.
Because we're not in our intuitive brain.
So how much do you, can we take a tangent? Like how much do you trust your intuition or your intuitive brain? Or when can you feel confident that, hey, I can trust my intuition now? Especially if we have been suppressing these signals, or
I don't want us to think about that we get our intuition and that's a steady state. We are, whether we're in our right intuitive brain or whether we're in our dopamine-driven, reactive, fearful brain, okay, happens all day long.
Yeah. So it's more about knowing, like I read this book, it's a great book, 15 Levels of Conscious Leadership. And they talk a lot about like above the line, below the line. And it's not, you always have to be above the line where you're rational and you're calm and defenseless versus ego-driven and defensive. It's about knowing, like great leaders just know where they are.
Yes.
It's less about like you always have to be perfect. It's just being like, I'm not in a state to make a good decision about this right now.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's the way, is that we don't arrive at this intuitive eating state. We can become more mindful, and when we harness our clarity, right, and the energy to make good decisions, and then there's some of us that we don't have that at some points, and that's when we have to have the structures in place. I used to have so many dietitians, bless their hearts, that would say, that are intuitive eating dietitians, and say that you should be able to keep ice cream in your freezer and cookies in your pantry, and that's a sign of wellness. That's a sign that you don't let these things unnerve you. And I said, well, it depends on the time of day. I don't even think about these things in the morning or during the day when I'm having a great time. Yeah. But after I'm completely, because I have a nervous system that is more highly sensitive, right? And so I don't have the bandwidth that other people have. I have no business when I'm sitting there watching Netflix having ice cream in my freezer, okay? And they go, well, then you're not recovered. And I go, don't tell me who's in recovery or not. I know myself.
Well, yeah, I mean, like you wouldn't tell an alcoholic who it would say, I'm an alcoholic, regardless of whether I've been sober for 15 years or not, right? And so it's like, you're not going to like just keep a bottle of vodka just so I can prove to myself, like that just seems silly. It's like, hey, if I have the agency and the forethought to control it's like the book Switch, right? It's like there's part of it, at the end of the day, you control your environment for those moments when the emotional elephant just takes over the cognitive rider, and that cognitive rider is too small to control that elephant. So what can is you shape the path.
Absolutely. So what I found myself doing is when I came back, it was not too much after that I first met you. When I first came back to the Valley, I was working in Vermont. I came back and I was an inflammatory mess. I was at the highest weight I was since I was in my recovery. I had, my inflammation markers were off the chart. I had fuzzy thinking. I was headed toward probably diabetes, which is in my family. And here I was at the pinnacle of my career, right? I was just, and then I went to see a naturopath, and we started looking at all this, my gut health, my markers, how am I going to bring down my inflammation? And I started studying and researching and everything. And that's when I really got into the polyvagal theory, which is the idea that our nervous systems, we're either in a state of protection and fear, or we're in a state of connection and love. And that's really what happened with this book. That's when I had my second recovery, and I needed to write about it. I needed to say, because there's a whole section of my book that talks about the body and this idea of inflammation as conceptualized fear in the body, and how do we create a recovery that works for us, because dosing sugar and eating sugar for me is just pulls me into my body into a state of fear. I have reactive hypoglycemia. I can't think anymore.
Which then just compounds. Like we were talking with one of our, I don't know if you know Lauren Baston, she's one of our great coaches here. But she was just talking about this study that she had come across that's like, perceived fear, actual, like perceived threats, actual threats, imagined threats. Body doesn't know the difference. And that kind of goes, I think, related to the vagal theory a little bit. Just like your nervous system is just on full alert.
It is, right? And so I decided that I would take my 30 plus years of working in the field plus my own personal experience and say, okay, this is what I used to think, and this is kind of what I think now. And it's much more attuned, because I had written my first book on Eat What You Love What You Eat for binge eating. I think that's what we connected over with my co-author, Dr. Michelle May. And it's all things mindful eating. But what we didn't talk about is that what do you do when you can't harness mindfulness?
Yeah, right. When that blog that Dan wrote, it's just like, dude, okay, I get it. I should put my phone away and just like chill for a minute, but like I can't.
Right. Yeah. It's like if we could all be in this state of clarity and mindfulness, then we can do this. But I wrote the book for people that, what do I do when I can't stay there?
So good. Yeah, and it's part memoir, but also a ton of science.
Yeah, a lot of science in it.
Which is really cool.
And there's a thread of spirituality all the way through it.
Yeah, we'll talk as we kind of wrap up. Food, body, and love, but the greatest of these is love. That's kind of a scriptural nod, I think, right?
It is.
Talk to me about that a little bit. How did faith inform this?
Well, first of all, I think that I came to the place with the polyvagal theory. I started studying this, is that what we learned is that our bodies are hardwired for safety through co-regulation and connection with others. We are meant and born to be in relationship. And without relationship, we become dysregulated. And that's why we all had such a difficult time during COVID. Okay. And I worry about our own technology and how that's dysregulating us and how we're becoming more of people looking for what we call love substitutes, right? And food is the best love substitute. And the reason why is we need it to survive. Okay. And secondly, it uses the same neural pathways on cranial nerves. Well, the vagus nerve is a cranial nerve. It's the 10th cranial nerve. But it works in unison and harmony with all of our other senses, our sensory cranial nerves. And it uses the very same pathways as socialization. So when we are socializing, it's a sensory experience. Okay. And we use the chewing, the same as we use for chewing and swallowing and smelling and everything, as if we were having a conversation with somebody. Food mimics that with the same neural pathways so that we feel like we're co-regulating. So food can become an attachment.
Right. Wow.
You said it before I said it. It becomes an attachment that's a natural attachment for safety. And when I was a young girl, my mom went into this very deep depression, not any fault of herself. Her nervous system collapsed. And she was really my everything at that point. And then there was a number of other things that happened that created a lack of safety in my life. And I created an attachment to food and sugar at 8 years old that got me through.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, medicators serve a purpose.
It served a purpose and it saved me. Right. But I still fight with, or now I befriend, right? Instead of fighting this tendency for me to want to turn toward food and sugar as the regulator. And so this is what this book was really about, was that it was like this big of course to all these people that feel like they've failed or they can't They can't do this. Especially the people that tried recovery from a all foods fit, all, health at every size. I know there was a purpose for that, but people that feel like they failed that. I failed eating disorder treatment.
Yeah.
I couldn't even do it that way. And I wanted to just say, hey, I've had 2 recoveries in my world, in my lifetime. And I was in the midst of the entire industry. I've been 30 years. I've gotten Lifetime Achievement Awards for working in the eating disorder industry. And I'm here to tell you, of course, there's a reason why this happens. Let me tell you the science about it, and I can help you with a pathway out of this.
Yeah, I love it. I think that's a great place to end. Where can people find out more? Of course, get the book, Food, Body, and Love.
You can get the book, Food, Body, and Love, in Amazon. There is a companion workbook that helps people work through step by step through that in their journey. I also have an online course, and in June I'm launching a community called the Metabolic Mindset. Just so you're never alone.
Yeah, super excited to continue to chart that journey with you. I always get your emails, so I'm always pumped for you.
Yeah.
Well, you've been just a huge value add to my friend group, myself, just the work we're doing here. And I wish you the best of luck, and thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome.
Thanks.